Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and paint this. These are what yours is going to look like final. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to layer. You all have an apple in front of you, and so they're very, very similar. Yes, there are some subtle differences. So I'm going to walk you through the steps. I want you to use the colors I'm using and how I'm putting it on. And then when we get towards the end, you'll be able to adjust the color a little bit more towards your specific apple. But at least you have a reference for sitting in front of you. You're painting your apple basically how I'm painting mine that's in front of my, on my area here. Okay? All right. So first step. I like to use these brushes first. So if you have, I told you to grab a couple different brushes. So grab your smallest one. And the other thing that I always like for you guys to do is have your sketchbook out. So on this side of your paper is going to be room to do some color checking. This will be where your painting is. All right. So when you get your color, and I kind of showed you that the other day, I put a little bit of water in here. This is why you have your own palette. So use your red first. You're going to put some yellow down first also. So let's get the red ready. And then I'm going to pull some yellow. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use this yellow instead. It's kind of goldenrod yellow. All right, once you get like a little pool going, do you see that? I'm going to kind of roll my brush in and just kind of fill that with pigment, just kind of stir it up a little bit. And that's how you're going to end up treating your paint. Okay, I want to show you what not to do. So do you see how full my brush is? And I lay this down, and now it's really globby and shiny. It's too full of paint. So I'm going to kind of scrape it on the end, and I'm actually going to take my brush and squeegee it against my water cup and kind of get some of that water out. And once I do that, look what happens. I can actually draw with it. Do you see how it has like a little pool right here when I glide across? For this start, that's still not good. There's still quite a bit of water in there, so I'm going to squeegee out just a little bit more. Okay. For our initial, I think it's still kind of too dark. Like I want it super, super light. I just want to stain the paper. So I just keep going back and forth to my water. Sometimes I'll take my paper towel if that's not working and just kind of do like a little dot to get rid of some of that water. Oh, there we go. Now we're back to where we need to be. Okay, I'm going to use this to draw with. So the reason why I'm doing yellow first is because you're probably noticing that there's a little bit of yellow in your apple. So we do the lightest color first, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my apple. When I draw my apple, I'm staying away from my highlights. So if you see any bright white highlights, try not to fill them in. Stay away from them. I'm also going to stay away from my stem. As best I can. Why am I staying away from the stem? Because that stem is a completely different color. So I'm going to paint around it. And then I'm going to fill it in and leaving some of my highlights showing. So you're going to leave some of your highlights. See, I'm drawing it in. Do you see I'm like using my brush how I would a pencil? I keep grabbing a little bit of water so I can let that glide. If you get too much, just grab some clear water and move it through. More water. Because now that I've got some paint on here, I'm just going to move what I already have without scrubbing. So I've added some clear water on this to fill it in. This is where you can tighten up your edges if you want. So I haven't really grabbed any more pigment. I've grabbed water. When I say clear water, when I mean clear, I know water is clear. But what I'm saying is that you're grabbing clean water. And then I can actually, like, this is a little dry up here. I'm going to pull these through and kind of give myself a good layer of yellow. Then I'm done for a sec. Okay, so again, super light layer, sticking away from all your bright highlights. I left a spot for my stem. Next step is we're going to start with the reds. So I'm going to go ahead and grab red.
You mean just lighter?
You're going to have more water. It's still transparent. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to check it. Well, it looks pretty good. I got a little bit of a pool here, but I think it's going to be okay because I'm going to end up keep moving that around. So you're going to look at your apple and you're going to put it everywhere but those white highlights. And you might even leave some of the this goldenrod undertone underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and put my first light layer on. That's a little better. So I touched my paper towel a little bit to get some of that water out. And now I'm going to go ahead and draw right back over it. Drag that around. Staying away from my highlights. And some of your apples might have more of a yellow in places. So like I have some yellow in through here. So I'm going to leave that a little lighter. And that one, I haven't even dipped my brush yet, guys. That's covering all of that in my paint. I'm going to grab some water, and I'm going to let this bleed. See what happens? You can make it bleed into the goldenrod color. You can kind of almost shade. That's why I love this brush, because look, I can pull my lines in and draw with it like a tiny pencil. So I'm still looking at my subject. I'm still looking at where the darks and lights are, and I'm starting to add my middle values with this red. I'm going to pull this up. All I did was grab clear water, and I'm just dragging my paint around. I'm going to leave this alone because it's really wet right here. I can't touch it anymore because I know if I do, it's going to start peeling my paper. So I'm going to grab a tiny bit of red, and there is yellow right through here. So I'm only going to bring my red in this far. I don't want to cover that yellow. Do you guys see how there's yellow right here in your spot? I don't want to cover that, so I'm going around it. You don't want to leave any pool of water on this. Do you see my brush strokes through here? That's okay, because that's kind of the texture of the apple. So if your brush strokes make sense, just like with acrylic paint, no big deal. But if your brush strokes are going this way across a rounded form, it's not going to look good. So again, treat your brush like a pencil. I just grabbed more watercolor because I wanted this to be more red up through here instead of yellow, so I'm grabbing a little bit more pigment. Okay, Well, we painted it all one flat light color, okay? Then we went with our darker color, and we... Mine doesn't look that clear. And we did another darker red, right? So we're going to paint it a third time. This time, more pigment, less water. And we're going to cover again, except now we're going to really do some of the dark spots. So you're going to paint over this 3 to 4 times. But by the time you get to your third layer, you're really just trying to hit your dark spots. Because I have my highlights, I have my light areas, and I have my middles, right? Now I'm going to work with the darkest, or the next dark and then the darkest areas. So let's do red again, except now less water. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm actually going to put some brown with it, but I'm going to wait just for a second. I'm going to get another layer of red. So see how dark that red is? And then I'm going to come back and I'm only going to put it on where I see my dark spots. So I see one here. And I do work a little bit at a time. Now I'm being a little bit more purposeful in where I'm placing these darks. I'm going to do the left side of the apple first. It's really dark down here. You really got to bring out your drawing mojo on this. Okay, see how I have these in here? This is really wet, so I want you to watch and see what happens. I'm going to grab some water. I'm actually going to dry my brush a little bit, and I'm going to use the edge, and you can get it to bleed. So it's a little bit softer. Again, using that tip, you can see how I'm dragging some of these lines down here. My apple actually does have lines on it. Yours may or may not. So again, I'm grabbing a little bit of clear water, and while this is wet, I'm just pulling the edge of the value. You can pull it to keep it smooth, or you can pull it to add texture. I am barely touching the surface. I am seriously just kind of skipping over it, like I would hatching almost. So you see how I'm starting to pull out the value and getting it to layer. Oops, I made a mistake. I got out of the line. I'll show you how to fix that later. So I kind of did that a little bit at a time. I'm going to grab more red, and I'm going to come to and do the other side. And there's a pretty big dark spot right here. Drawing in the dark spots. Okay, I'm going to get water, touch the edge of my brush, and I'm going to drag. Oops, that's too much because I got a puddle here. I don't want a puddle. I'm just dragging the edge of that value and pushing it where I want it. Around these highlights. Again, using it just like a pencil. My brush is dry. I'm actually lifting some of this out too. There's no water in my brush. It's dry. I'm actually just moving the paint on my surface exactly where I want it. Because I'm looking at the apple and putting those marks. Now's the time if you want to do some clean water. You can actually soften the edge of some of those highlights. If you notice your apples are kind of really super shiny, but there might be areas where you want to soften them, I literally just put a tiny bit of water there, and if you re-wet it, it'll soften the edges. You might like that better. You might want to leave some of them really more crisp. So I kind of soften the edges of some of my highlights through there. Do you see how the yellow kind of peeks through? You see that? How some of your yellow peeks through? It should if you've left it alone. Alright, so 3 more steps. We're going to do the darker darks, we're going to do a stem, and we're going to do a cast shadow. Okay? If you need more highlights up here, you're going to take clear water. You're going to place it in that spot that you want to highlight, and you're going to press your paper towel and lift. You can only do that if you only have 1 or 2 layers. If I try to lift out down here, it's probably not going to come out very well. And if you try to do a highlight 5 days later, it's probably not going to come out. So you have to do it within the same day. You could try to do it the next day, probably be okay. But the longer that watercolor sits on your paper, the more it's going to stain it. Alright, let's pull some. You know what? I'm going to try something here. What is the complement of red? Green. So, can we add a really, really dark green for the shadows, or am I crazy? Let's do it. So, you know what I would do? I'm going to take a little bit of the dark green, and I'm going to put it right here in my palette, right next to it. Then I'm going to pick the red, and I'm going to roll some red into the dark green. Right there. You see what I did right next to it? And then I'm going to test it. Oh yeah, look at that. Perfect color. So I grabbed the dark red, I grabbed that little army green color, and then I grabbed our red and I mixed it right here to make that perfect apple color for our darks. So let's use that, and let's only put it on the dark spots. So I see a dark spot there. I see a dark spot there. Here. You're more translucent, not so much transparent. So I'm really not using a lot of water on this. I see a dark spot here. I see look at this, watch this little dark line here that I'm going to end up pulling. Watch your apple, and you put it where your darks are. See how I'm using that to draw? See how I'm pulling my brush down? Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush completely out. I'm going to dry it completely. And now my paint's still wet. Now I'm going to drag my brush on the ends of those values I just put in there. And I can do that because my brown is still kind of wet. So that's why I moved kind of quickly, so that I could come back. And even if it's dry, as long as you're doing it lightly and not scrubbing, it'll pick it back up and you can move the pigment. So I got a little bit more water on my brush. I'm going to drag these little ends in here. And pull these so they look a little bit more natural. The dark brown, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and throw our stem in. So, again, layering. So let's start out with the light green. Actually, that stem looks like it's got a little bit of yellow in it. I'm going to start with this green. And then test it. And I'm going to throw my stem right in there. I'm going to squeeze my brush out because I got a puddle of water here. I don't want it there. So I squeezed my brush out, and now my brush is dry, so I'm able to put it in there. And then I'm actually going to use that color brown that I had from the apple, because mine has brown on the end. And you're wondering how I'm getting these really fine lines. It's because my brush doesn't have a lot of water in it. And I'm using the very tip, and I'm not pressing down like this with my brush. I'm using the very, very end of it. I'm going to grab a little darker green too and throw it in. You guys need to look at your color scheme just like you would with acrylic paint. Okay, I can't get this any darker because it's wet down here, so I have to wait on it right here. I want that darker, but it's not getting any darker because it's wet, so I have to come back to that. Okay, I know I'm moving kind of quick, but for the sake of your demo, I'm going to throw a cast shadow. If you guys ever look at artist Wayne Thiebaud, he does these colored shadows, and they are awesome. He always does blue, so I'm going to pick a blue. Yes, he's the cake guy, so you guys can look at that. Do you have to do a blue shadow? You could do gray, because your paper's white, so you could make like a gray shadow for your white paper, right? But I'm going to do blue, because I love his cast shadows, and I'm going to put some purple with it. So I'm going to test my blue. I'm going to test my blue. I'm going to add some purple with my blue. And I'm going to take it. Now see this little mistake I made? Goes right up against it, and it's going to go away anyways. That's where you have to glide your brush. Now, if you want, you guys can leave it more of a hard edge on your cast shadow, Or you can take some, rinse your brush out and dry it, and then just take your water, dry brush here, because your shadow's already wet, and you can just kind of glide it, and it'll kind of dissipate into your paper.